Becky and me, welcome to the programme.
First tonight, the direct appeal from police to a man from Essex thought to be missing with a 13-year-old girl he met on the internet.
22-year-old James Grenfell from Braintree is thought to have travelled to Torbay to meet Tegan Feekins.
Police believe the teenager may have lied about her age. Both have now been missing for 4 days. Victoria Webb reports.
It's a relationship that began over the internet. How it developed is being investigated by the police, but it sparked off a nationwide search for 13-year-old Tegan Feekins from Devon and 22-year-old James Grenfell, who's from Braintree in Essex.
We have growing concerns about the whereabouts of James and Tegan. Our priority now is finding out where they are and checking on them, making sure that they're fit and well, and ultimately returning them to their families who are concerned about them.
Tegan was last seen by her mum on Friday evening when she dropped her off at a youth club in Torquay. It's believed she may have lied about her age and that she's now with James Grenfell, who travelled to Torbay via public transport.
The police are now analysing computers to look at the type of conversations these two are having to see if it gives them any ideas as to where they may be. This case obviously once again highlights the safety of vulnerable youngsters using social networking sites.
The police aren't revealing exactly where in Braintree James is from, but he used to attend what was then called the Alec Hunter Secondary School, and members of his family live in Rana Drive. They declined to speak to us today. At a press conference, it was made clear that James had never been in trouble with the police, and they made a direct appeal for him to get in touch.
We feel that the situation may have got out of hand, and that you haven't expected any of this. What I would say is that, our main concern is the welfare of the two of you, both you and Tegan, and I would encourage you to come forward and contact either us, the police, or somebody you trust.
They want anyone with information to contact them. It's now 4 days since Tegan was last seen. Both families are eagerly awaiting news of their whereabouts. Victoria Webb, Anglia News, Braintree.
Well, we all know that children need to be careful on the internet, but what can be done to protect them?
Well, earlier we spoke to Lucinda Feld from ChildNet International, an organisation which specialises in just that. I began by asking, what is their advice to children?
It's really important for children and young people to remember that not everyone or everything they see on the internet is reliable. So that means the person that they're talking to might not be who they say they are, and they are still a stranger. So we encourage children not to meet up with someone. And also, if they see something or talk to someone that makes them feel worried or uncomfortable, to tell their parent or their carer, or to know where to report it.
And how can the parents help in getting this message across?
This is a really challenging area for parents, and we want to encourage parents to be vigilant about what their children are doing on the internet. It's important to engage with them to understand the types of technologies they're using, why they're so attractive, and also a lot of the social networking providers have provided safety information on their sites and means that they can keep safe. So for parents, we'd encourage them to remember that, yes, your kid may be more technology savvy than you, but actually you have the life experience and the wisdom that you can share with your young person that they should translate into their online conduct.
You say challenging. I've got a couple of teenage daughters, and I have to say, getting them to do what you want is not always the easiest thing. Any special tips for getting through to teenagers?
One of the things that we found works is to encourage parents to understand the site, so to get a profile on one of the social networking sites, to know what it is. Sometimes we discuss the holy grail as being to have your child make you their friend. It's not always possible, but try to have a relationship where you can talk about these things.
Lucinda, thank you very much indeed.
And you can get more advice and information from one of ChildNet International's websites.
The address is up there on the screen, chatdanger.com. That's chatdanger, just one word, .com.
The girlfriend of a man left in a coma after he was attacked by a gang of youths on a train in Essex says she's heartbroken that he'll probably never know his baby daughter.
Molly Jones from Leigh-on-Sea was heavily pregnant when she witnessed the attack on her boyfriend, Michael Abui, as they travelled between Southend and Benfleet in May.
She gave birth a week later. Shortly afterwards, Michael fell into a coma and is unlikely to recover. ITV's Marcus Powell sent us this report.
Molly Jones has experienced the joy of becoming a mum for the first time, but her happiness is also touched by tragedy, as her baby daughter may never know her father. Molly's partner, Michael Abui, has only seen 4-month-old Ava twice. Just a few days after his daughter was born, he collapsed into a coma as a result of being attacked on a train by a gang of youths a week earlier.
About 15 people attacked him all at once, stamping on his head and punching him. Hopefully it won't get to the stage where I have to tell her dad's passed away or something like that, because that'd be really difficult for me to do.
I mean, but he does have some very...
But yeah, he will be.
Serious.
He's severely brain damaged, so he won't be like he was, and he won't be able to be a father like other fathers are.
Michael was travelling with pregnant Molly from Southend to London on May the 29th after a meal out. He was attacked in front of her by a gang of at least 15 teenage boys and girls for no apparent motive. Police stopped the train at Pitsea. A week later, Michael complained of terrible headaches and then he collapsed into a coma. The police are today appealing for more witnesses to help.
Well, we know the train was busy. There's a lot of people on that train who are yet to come forward who are quite clearly witnesses to the assault, and I really urge them to come forward. In particular, there were family groups on the train who were yet to identify, and there's one woman described to us who's described as white, blonde hair, who had a young girl with her who was playing on a Nintendo or similar game machine. I'm quite sure she witnessed the assault, so I urge her to come forward as well. But anybody on that train could be of assistance to me.
Detectives this morning arrested two 16-year-old girls in North London in connection with the attack, bringing the total picked up so far to 20. All of them are aged under 21. But with Michael still lying in hospital with life-threatening injuries, the police hope they can bring his attackers to justice. Marcus Powell, Anglia Tonight, Southend.
4 youths have today admitted being involved in an attack on a Northamptonshire pensioner who was beaten with a hammer. Peter Bryan, who was 65, was attacked just yards from his home at Higham Ferrers last November. He died 3 weeks later in hospital. A teenager has already pleaded guilty to murder at Northampton Crown Court. Today, 4 youths denied murder, but 3 pleaded guilty to violent disorder and another guilty to affray. They'll be sentenced on Friday.
Now, he hit the headlines when he was arrested for confronting youths who threw apples at his home.
But tonight, Roland Digby from Royston in Hertfordshire is in the clear after assault charges against him were dropped.
He described a decision by the Crown Prosecution Service to dismiss the case as a victory for common sense. Here's Matthew Hudson.
Roland Digby enjoying his garden and the first peace of mind he's had in 3 weeks. News that he won't face prosecution for assault and a possible criminal record has lifted a huge weight from his shoulders.
I think you should be allowed to stand up for your own. You should be able to protect your own peace and quiet and your own property, as long as you're doing it in the right way. And I felt I was doing it in the right way. And obviously the CPS now believe that I probably was.
Last week, Mr Digby faced the indignity of attending magistrates' court after being arrested and charged. He'd tried to make a citizen's arrest on a youth who'd been part of a group throwing apples at him and his wife from this bank as they sat in their garden in Royston. It was the 3rd time in 4 days the couple had been targeted. Mr Digby had restrained the teenager in a wrestling hold before letting him go. But when the police finally arrived at his home, it wasn't to take a statement, but to arrest him. But today, in a statement of their own, the Crown Prosecution Service said, following a further review, we concluded there was insufficient evidence to prove that Mr Digby used unreasonable and excessive force or that he was acting unlawfully. There is no realistic prospect of conviction, and we have discontinued the case. Mr Digby says he heard the news from the media, but he's been touched by the letters and other support he's received from the public, many recounting their own experiences of antisocial behaviour.
Mr Digby has, of course, thought long and hard about what happened, and he tells me that faced with the same level of provocation, he would act the same way again, believing what he did was proportionate. But at the same time, he says that as somebody who was born and bred in Royston, he hopes these events won't spoil the good relations that he's always had with the local police.
Ordinary people are allowed to use reasonable force in self-defence, to protect property, to prevent crime, or to make a lawful arrest. But what constitutes reasonable force has always been a grey area.
If he used force to detain them, in the world that we live in now, he would automatically become someone who was liable for arrest. But of course he would be able to justify that physical use of force by saying, I had been assaulted, i.e. the apples had been thrown at me, and therefore, having been assaulted, I was legally entitled to arrest the people who had assaulted me.
Mr. Digby now wants to put the whole episode behind him and enjoy what's left of the good weather. Matthew Hudson, Anglia News in Royston.